So welcome all. It's good to have you along with us this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you're joining us from around the world. This GBSN webinar, Microsimulations and the Future of Experiential Learning, is brought to you with the Global Business School Network and, of course, our conference sponsors, Capsim, who are in particular sponsoring our faculty simulation lab that forms part of GBSN Beyond. So the session kind of fits into the broader GBSN Beyond as one of our tracks, which is our faculty track, which, as the name suggests, is geared specifically towards faculty from business schools and higher education institutions, where we're trying to assist faculty in this realm of experiential learning, how they can use their research, their data, things that they would ordinarily be doing in the classroom, but how do we take that beyond the classroom, quite literally. So that's what the session is about. Of course, we'll talk more generally about experiential learning and then more specifically of how this fits into GBSN Beyond and how you can, we hope, get involved, register, and sign up to take advantage of the awesome opportunity that's been brought by GBSN and Capsim. So to introduce you to my two highly qualified panelists today, I have to say that because he's the CEO of the Global Business School Network, for who I work. Dan LeClair is with us for the next hour or so, and then Matt Shull as well, who's Market Development Manager at Capsim. So welcome to both Dan and to Matt. Dan, maybe I can start with you and I'll stop sharing the screen so we can see our faces. To give us a brief introduction to GBSN, for those who are joining us and are not familiar with the network, and then also why experiential learning in particular is so important to the network.
Thank you for that, Rob, and it's nice to see you, Matt. Looking forward to working with you both during this webinar. The Global Business School Network is a group of leading business schools, nearly 110 from 50 countries, working together with NGOs and companies to essentially improve leadership, management, and entrepreneurship for the developing world. Our formal mission is to improve access to quality, locally relevant management and entrepreneurship education, all in and for the developing world. I emphasized a couple of points on that because I'm leading us into the second part of your question, Rob. And first of all, what is experiential learning? There are lots of formal definitions out there. For me, basically, I just break the word into its parts. It's both experiential and it's learning. There are lots of opportunities out there to have experiences, but they don't often involve the structure that's required to learn from those experiences and to build on them in meaningful ways. Similarly, there are lots of opportunities to learn without experience. Many of us have been victimized by the 3-hour lecture or the 2-hour lecture without the opportunity to actually apply. So experiential learning is exactly that. It's the combination of the two in the way I think about that. And that includes a lot of things, from internships to simulations to projects for companies, a variety of things under that umbrella. To me, it's to accomplish three things. One is application of concepts, things, theories, ideas, techniques that we learn, whether they be through books or the classroom, to be able to apply them in practice. Secondly, it's about context. Management is still very contextual. The way we do it in Nigeria is different than the way we do it in France. And that kind of context only comes through the experiential kind of learning that we provide. But the third piece that we often forget is it's also about the connections, the social capital that we build. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Dan. And I should have said at the start that the session is being recorded. So we're doing so for a number of reasons. One, we always do them in that manner, but it makes it easier, especially if you're joining from a school who's already registered or an institution who's already registered for GBSN Beyond. We've had many questions related specifically to the faculty simulation lab. So it will make it easier for you to disseminate the video after the fact, and we'll make sure that you receive a recording and any supplemental materials within the next couple of hours by the end of today. Well, that depends on what the time is where you find yourself around the world at this point. Also make sure, as some of you already have, to make use of the chat function. You can use either the chat or the Q&A, but the chat, everyone else is able to then see what questions have already been posed. We'll either respond to them directly in the chat box or address them throughout the session as we go along. So please make use of that chat function. Matt, welcome to you again. Maybe just before we get into the kind of meaty parts of what it is that we're doing, give us a flyover of what Capsim is, who Capsim is, and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. Well, just to start, thank you everybody for your time, for joining today's webinar. And Rob, thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Matthew Schell. I'm Capsim's Market Development Manager, where my primary role at Capsim is to assist both our academic as well as corporate authors with creating their own custom microsimulations, just as we'll be doing as part of the GBSN Beyond faculty track. To give you a brief insight into Capsim, we have been in the simulation industry for about 35 years now. In fact, we started in the mid-1980s creating custom simulations for a lot of major corporations out there. But the last 25, 30 years or so, we've really put an emphasis as well on academia, where a lot of our project and group-based simulations are utilized as a staple of many of the strategic management courses and going down to the intro to business courses around the globe. And at any given point in time, we're in about 1,100 institutions around the globe and providing support services to about 3,000 professors and about 140,000 students. And just to, of course, we're incredibly happy to partner with GBSN for this competition, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Great. Dan, I guess we have heard from a lot of our members, conversations we've been in together, conversations you've had one-on-one with deans and different heads of schools and administrators. And the nature of the conversation has changed over the course of the last month as, sitting in February, March, maybe we'd be able to travel in 2 months' time, to now sitting in a position where we have no idea when we'd really be able to get back to traveling anytime soon. And then, of course, there's the broader debate of, is this just the new normal? That it's not going back to normal, but going back towards a new normal. And I guess, as with everything in life, the balance will be somewhere in between, a blend of actually having students go and physically travel to different destinations. But the use of technology, of course, without sounding cliched, allows for the scalability of things. Have you, in terms of using technology to scale or to take experiential learning to different sectors and parts of the world, do you have any sense yet on how realistic this is on a broader scale? And I know it's a kind of hard, more theoretical question but before Matt gives us the nuts and bolts of what can be done and what has been done, I'm just wondering whether you, in your experience, have experienced this being done really well, or have seen signs of where this could really work on a grander scale.
Yeah, I appreciate your both your lead-in and your question. And the lead-in gives me an opportunity to say a few words about what we're trying to do here, but also the actual question gives me an opportunity, if I will. So one is, part of what we're doing with GBSN Beyond in general is to work with schools in a way that doesn't require them to travel. We've, for many years, been doing an annual conference. It's a great annual conference. It's a flagship event for us. But when we decided that we would not do it this year in person, we said, look, what do we do in its place? And we decided that whatever that is, we want to make it more inclusive. So we want to be able to provide a set of experiences for not just leaders in business schools, but faculty and for students. But we also wanted to move the needle on the mission of GBSN, which I mentioned a little while ago. And And that brings us to the second part. Basically, what we're talking about here is providing opportunities for learners to experience management and to experience it in some kind of context. And business schools are great at doing that a variety of ways, including actually sending their students to different places, right? To give that context and that experience. But when that's not possible or less possible today than it's ever been, to move about even locally, but definitely not internationally, technology plays a pretty big role. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're creating a context for students to learn through experience and to experience the things in a micro way, a small way, but to immerse themselves in it. So I think we've come a long way with the technology and our ability to do that. This is not virtual reality, but it's getting close, since most of us spend our time in front of the computer regardless, right? Regardless of what country we're in, what setting we're in. So I'm going to pause there, Rob, to make sure I got all the aspects of your question. Yeah.
Yeah, and really leads us into Matt in terms of telling us, and this is the softball, Matt, because this is what you do. You have to tell us on why technology is so important for e-learning. What is your experience, and what have you seen, and why are you so confident that this kind of thing is necessary and will work?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think it really goes to Dan's point about the role that technology is increasingly playing when it comes to education, and that, you know, we've already seen digital trends in courseware on the rise over the last decade or so. And really kind of the global current situation we're in has only compounded that, because it's left a lot of instructors, a lot of educators with having to, you know, quickly adapt to a completely online environment. So what we're really trying to learn is that, you know, in regards to the type of solutions that they're utilizing, that there needs to be this sort of flexibility when it comes to having solutions that can be applied both in an online and an in-person atmosphere, at basically the flick of a switch. But really what's been the main obstacle for, you know, finding those type of solutions has been that, you know, when it comes to having effective solutions, you got to find a solution that's, you know, going to provide meaningful learning, as well as an experience that's both relevant, engaging, and, you know, to Dan's point earlier, practical as well. And from our perspective at Capsim, we really believe that simulations can deliver on all of these different points.
And so let's get into kind of some of the meat of the faculty simulation lab that we're offering. But I guess also important just to note for anyone who's viewing this either after the fact or live right now, yes, we'd love for you to sign up to the faculty simulation lab, but these kinds of things and technology, of course, available to you at any time to reach out to us. Matt, the distinction between a simulation and a microsimulation, why is it micro? Presumably just because it's shorter. What's the key distinction?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that is one of the key distinctions right there, is that, you know, when you think of a typical business simulation, you know, a lot of individuals would think that you're thinking something more project-based, more group-based, that's taking a larger role in the curriculum, for instance, where individuals have to work together to make key decisions. But by definition, within its name, microsims, as you can imagine, are much more abridged. They are much shorter. I mean, in our perspective at Capsim, typically a microsimulation can take as little as 30 minutes to an hour to implement. And really the emphasis around that bite-sized learning, you know, letting the students learn in chunks, if you will, on different types of topics. And just to kind of run through some of the common, let's say facets of a microsimulation, you know, really they typically have a very specific topical focus. You know, are we measuring, say, how you would do as a managerial accountant, for example, or how well can you, you know, do a market analysis, for instance. And within microsimulations, there's really an emphasis on, you know, measuring a defined set of attributes, you know, such as, you know, soft skills, for instance, like problem solving, or, you know, going back to the accounting example, maybe how do you interpret, not only how do you interpret a financial statement, but how do you actually, and analyze that and provide a recommendation to somebody, for instance. So kind of giving that real world experience. But outside of that, I would say that, you know, another key benefit to microsims is that where with simulations, you're typically looking at it again from like the group level, for instance. Really with microsims, a lot of them are individualized, including ours here at Capsim, where you can look at the analytics of performance both at the individual and the cohort level. And, microsims have been used in a variety of applications, whether it comes to academia, not just in the business school, of course, but in other schools as well. But also on the corporate side, they use microsims for, again, financial performance analysis. And even at the government level, they use it for everything from, trying to analyze traffic patterns to even looking at things like, the weather, for instance. But really a misconception has been with microsims is that, they're difficult to implement within your course, but also can be difficult to create. And that's what we're hoping to dispel that notion when it comes to the faculty simulation lab.
And just so that I'm clear on the again, distinctions from a user point of view, and correct me if I heard you incorrectly or misunderstood. Mm-hmm. Are you saying microsimulations are more to be used by an individual, or it tells you better outcomes to compare individuals who have individually kind of gone through a microsimulation?
So actually a little bit of both, I mean, the way that it would work is that, obviously the experience can be done by the individual, but, the way that these micro simulations can be implemented is can be, be very asynchronous where everybody can complete it. You can see those individual results, but then you can also compare them to the general cohort or even to the general populace of everybody in the world that's gone through that simulation. So there's a lot of interesting metrics and comparisons you can make with that data.
And in terms of your process, kind of think the science of learning, so working with faculty, incorporating these kinds of things into curricula, how easy is it to just slot a simulation into an existing curriculum? Does it require a lot of rejigging overall? Just talk us a bit through the science of learning, so to speak, and how this fits in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in terms of implementation, first off, I mean, really it's as simple as, just providing a hyperlink to students to go ahead and try a microsim. And, in terms of, navigating it into your course, being these so abridged, I mean, you could do this as, a fun homework assignment. We see this used in flipped classrooms as well. Really easy just to implement as, like a quick knowledge check, for instance, as opposed to something that's a lot more grand in scale. So, but as regards to the science of learning, I mean, really, what we try to incorporate into all of our simulations is kind of 4 key pillars that we kind of found that were really most effective at, creating a good learning tool. And really those come down to this, microsimulation really has to assess both knowing and doing. So not just, their understanding of the knowledge, but the practical application of that knowledge. In addition to that, I mean, really what we want to do is we want to foster accurate self-awareness as well. So we want to give the students an idea of not just how they think they are at certain skills, such as problem solving, but actually give them some empirical information on where they actually are at against the general populace and compare where they think they are. So are they overestimating or underestimating their abilities? And then as far as the other 2 criteria, I mean, really, we want to make sure we're delivering a relevant, engaging experience, and which is great with the simulation we're going to be showing you today is a simulated email environment. So it's something that everybody can relate to. It's very adaptable for students because, virtually all career fields are using email correspondence, and even in the university sphere, of course. And then the final one would be providing actionable feedback. It's one thing to go through this kind of immersive experience and everything within the simulation, but what is the output? What is the student getting in terms of feedback? Can they actually use that feedback to actively set goals to improve skills going forward? These are all key things we emphasize within our microsims.
Okay, just a reminder, of course, you're welcome to put in any questions in the chat box at the bottom, and Dan, feel free to jump in so that I don't monopolize questions if you have any for Matt as well. So Matt, what is Capsim Inbox microsimulations? What is that experience more specifically?
Absolutely, and I think for this portion of the webinar, I'd be happy to actually show you what it looks like, just to visualize what the interface looks like. So let me go ahead and share my screen here real quick. Okay. So basically, to provide an overall summary of what Inbox is, and then we'll get into some of these smaller components immediately after. A good way to think about Capsim Inbox is it's, again, a simulated email environment where the student is taking the role of a manager at a company. And essentially, they're going to be experiencing the day in the life of that manager. Responding to, both internal and external stakeholders, whether they be, one of your fellow managers or the CEO, maybe it's a client or some other external stakeholder, for instance. But you're kind of navigating the, day-to-day situations, problems, and even crises that may be present for a manager. And a good way to conceptualize what exactly the Inbox microsimulation is kind of like a digital choose your own adventure. So think of it like, say you want to respond to an email a given way. Well, that can bring you down a completely divergent path if you responded a different way. And these could both, so essentially the students are being able to see their consequences in real time as they're happening, just as they would in the real world. But as far as like the key 3 components of the microsimulation experience, which you'll all be able to create should you like to join the faculty simulation competition, is going to be first an onboarding, where we actually introduce the student to a fictional scenario. What's this company that they're working at? What is their role? How long have they been there? And what kind of key issues can they expect to encounter? And then after that, we do a quick self-assessment where we ask the student to rate themselves relative to their peers on where they think they're at with certain skills. Say like problem solving. I think I'm about average when I come to my problem solving capabilities. I might put myself in the 50th percentile, and I may do similar things for say leadership and communication, to give some other examples. And what's great about that self-assessment is that when they go through the inbox simulation, which you'll see the interface in just a second, we're actually able to compare their performance in the microsim with their self-assessment to go back to that self-awareness component. So actually showing them not only how aware they are of their own abilities, but we can actually visualize the skill gaps to help them identify where they can improve those skills. But basically, to show you what the simulation interface looks like, I can go ahead and bring that up here now. So should you like to join this simulation competition, this is exactly what you'd be creating. And as you can see, it looks very much like the Outlooks and the Gmails we use on a day-to-day basis. And I can kind of just walk you through the interface here really quick. But the first things first is that you'll see in the middle of the screen, of course, is a list of emails from all of the fictional characters you can create, right down to their titles and the subject lines. The students will then be able to respond to these emails in a multiple choice format. And the reason we decided to make a multiple choice is because just like in the real world, there's multiple different ways to handle a given situation. So maybe there's one particular response that is just entirely the most effective. Maybe we want to attribute, say, 5 points towards communication if they pick that response. Well, maybe the second response is a little bit less effective, maybe 3 points. Maybe the next response doesn't really move the needle, doesn't move the conversation forward. Maybe we put that at 0. But then maybe there's a response that's very detrimental to the situation. We can always do negative points for that. So it gives you a little insight into the scoring and how the student would respond to these. And again, because of that kind of choose your own adventure atmosphere, they can really go down some interesting divergent paths, but also converge back into a main storyline. All of that you'll have the capability to do if you'd like to create your own sim. And in addition to emails, we also have the ability to make instant messages, and there's always a company drive file if you wanted to put additional documentation in there. That way, maybe the students have to look at a particular sales report, for instance, to make a well-informed decision on a given email. So kind of walking through that. And within a typical inbox experience, some of the ones we've created at Capsim, typically these are 20 to 30 emails total. But for this competition, we're looking to make a little bit more abridged version than that, about 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. So with that, you'd only be looking at creating about 15 to 20 emails, I would say, to actually create a decent simulation within the platform.
Just a question at that point that's just come through from Esther. Thanks, Esther. Are the emails pre-written or will the students have to write them out? I guess that's in terms of the responses.
No, that's an excellent question. So actually, the emails themselves would actually be written in by you, the authors. So you're the ones kind of populating these emails, which kind of define the issues, define the tasks that the student will be dealing with in this managerial role. And the student will be responding to those, essentially. So.
And then another question from Pravat. It says that it's been said, presumably in all of our materials, there's been a lot thereof, that says the 40 emails is the limit. What does that mean? Assuming that the statement is correct.
I'm sorry, could you say the last part one more time, Rob?
40 emails is the limit. What does that mean?
So basically, we want to make sure that, in terms of complexity for this competition and the amount of time we're allowing individuals to create this, we wanted to kind of put some guardrails, if you will. So basically, the more emails you start to add, the more complex your version becomes, obviously. So we just kind of put a hard ceiling on with 40 emails, just to make sure that anybody that creates a version kind of stays within that 15 to, let's say, 30-minute range for their experience, basically.
And so I just want to be clear again for some of these questions, and Kerry, I'll get to yours in a second as well. This is the limitations that we've put on for the purposes of our particular faculty simulation lab.
Correct.
Right. If anyone chooses to approach Capsim separately to do longer versions, that can certainly be done.
Absolutely. And in fact, something that we'll cover a little bit later in today's conversation, but anybody that creates a simulation as part of this competition can work directly with us to utilize that in their instruction. Absolutely. And we can develop those outside of the competition as well after the fact. So,
two questions from Kerry. The second, which I'll deal with first, wants to know the average duration or time commitment for a typical microsim. I assume Kerry means from a user perspective, which I guess you've already answered, but maybe in terms of just
definitely expand upon that.
How long does the process take?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the student experience, so when I'm referencing Capsim's internal versions that we've created, again, about 30 emails on average, we give the students about an hour to complete it, 60 minutes. But I would say that, if I were to say an average time for completion, we're looking at about 35 to 45 minutes. So based on the parameters of this competition, if you're creating a 15 to, again, 30-minute version, you're looking at about half the normal emails. Again, 15 to 20, I would say, would be a good starting point.
Okay, great. And then the first part of Kerry's question, which I think is a good question and leads us on to what is needed in order to participate. Kerry says when thinking of microsimulations, she tends to associate them with classroom-based courses, activities offering the opportunity to apply concepts learned in class. Have you, or how have you seen them implemented within project-based experiential learning? So where students are working on a particular project with a specific company or partner. Just trying to imagine different possibilities in a more field-based context.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we've seen a variety of different use cases when it comes to, Capsim inbox microsimulations. And to kind of, expand a little bit beyond that point too, I mean, we've seen this, particularly used for like live case studies, where you're really trying to emphasize a key, issue, but really kind of make it jump off the page. So, rather than having the student kind of taking an outsider role, kind of reading through this case study and trying to understand it from the outside looking in, with the simulation experience, I mean, they're really put directly in that situation. So really much more of a project-based focus and much more immersive than you typically find there. So I'd say that'd be probably one of the main ways that you could address that.
Right. So I'm just having a squiz at the multitude of questions that are coming in. Mm-hmm. So, and in terms of utilizing this in instruction.
Mm-hmm. So using an instruction, I think going back to some of these additional key points, I mean, we already kind of hit on the, the kind of fun exercise and the live case study aspect, but one of the key other areas we're seeing this utilized for is assessment, actually. More particularly because at no point do the students ever see like the most effective response, if you will. It's very hard to game this type of microsimulation. We've seen this used as an assessment component, not just for a single implementation, but also for pre and post tests, where it's kind of revolutionary in the fact where you can kind of see empirical longitudinal development on their skills. Because say they take your microsimulation at the beginning of the semester, and then they want to take it again at the end. They're going to see those both on the student side and on the professor side, they're going to see those results correlated directly against each other to see just how much they've improved, the net change between those two implementations. But outside of that, two other use cases in instruction we've seen is as a certification tool. Whether it's for a particular piece of technology or as a better example, if your learning objectives are very similar to the skills we're assessing in this version, it could be used for assurance of learning. But as a final component, perhaps most interesting that I've found is more recently, some authors have been approaching us to want to create inbox versions for research purposes. That way they can gather de-identified, of course, data on different decision-making for their own research, essentially. And even on the corporate side, I mean, we see similar different applications. I mean, we see this used as part of an HR screening process for new hires, or even to identify high potential employees, honestly. So, I mean, the best part is too, is that we're kind of still learning what exactly microsims, including inbox, can do.
Great. So I'm going to get to the development process in just a second, but I want to knock some of these questions out the way before I forget to get back to them. And I love that there are a lot of very specific, particular clarifying questions, because that's why we're here. So please don't shy away from asking anything for that matter. So Esther just wants to confirm, going back to the 40 emails, is that across all parties in the particular case? So presumably if you have, expecting a team of 3 or 4 people to interact and respond and
that's correct.
Right.
Yeah, if it's one individual or if it's 3 individuals, yeah, we would still want to have that cap at 40 emails, because the way we thought of it too, in terms of team structure for 2 or 3, it's kind of a good balance for kind of distributing the workload in terms of creating these different emails without having too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will. So,
right.
yeah.
Divya's got a question on individuals or teams in terms of this competition specifically.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the competition, just to differentiate between the competition and the actual experience, and I can expand upon this if necessary. In terms of the competition, yeah, 2 to 3 people on a team would be most ideal, is what we had suggested. You can do it individually though, if you'd like to. Just keep in mind that it is a little bit better to kind of distribute that amount of work that you have to create in terms of the emails. But as far as the actual experience itself, that'll be done individually. One person would be going through it at a time.
I think maybe just important to note at this point, we haven't, I don't believe, in terms of marketing purposes and mails and things that we've been pushing out, really been positioning this very strongly. Sure, the information is there, the wording is there, but strongly as competition, where yes, there is a prize, a cash prize to be won, and we will ultimately be deciding that this is deemed to be the best simulation. Generally speaking, as far as the experience goes and what you get out at the end, we believe is far more valuable and available for you to ultimately use in your real life experience. So I think that was just important to point out at this point in time, that regardless of whether or not you win the competition, you still have a micro simulation at your disposal. Dan, you've unmuted, I assume, for a reason.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to maybe just explain why we're doing this at GBSN. I mean, it just goes back to our mission to improve access to quality, locally relevant management education for the developing world. That local relevance is an important dimension for us. But when you think about the experience that we're providing, it's in many ways experiential learning for faculty. And the idea behind this is really to create a structured experience for faculty to build a micro simulation in a short period of time that works with support from not only the GBSN team, but the Capsim team. So we've built this around providing skills to faculty so that they can build other micro simulations, whether they be on the Capsim platform or not. But the idea is to build these skills in an experiential way for faculty. The second thing is, of course, that the outcomes, the products themselves, are then important to GBSN, right? So we know there's a shortage of content that's useful for understanding the context of, let's say, Ethiopia. My favorite example. This is an opportunity for someone if they want to provide their students with the experience of managing in an Ethiopian garment factory in a safe environment where they can make mistakes, get feedback on those mistakes, and do it from their home in Paris. So I guess the way I like to think about this is that this is what we call a slam dunk. Faculty get the experience and the learning that comes from this. We at GBSN get the content and the opportunity to help schools to teach more effectively in a locally relevant context. So everything fits together in a nice, neat little way. And it's easy. We heard from schools as we were building GBSN Beyond that this is very exciting. The student projects, the competition that we're doing, the roundtables, all of these really great experiences we're providing with GBSN Beyond. But the one thing I want you to know is that our faculty are really busy right now. And so we designed this to be easy, to not take a lot of time, and to create a set of outcomes as well as experiences. So we're really excited about this and happy that Capsim agreed to come on board at our invitation.
Thanks, Dan. A couple of process questions, Matt. So one, Capsim, I guess, on its own, separate to this particular faculty simulation lab, how does your subscription business model work? Do institutions, organizations, universities sign up and then faculty are free to use it? Do faculty members sign up with you independently?
So in regards to actually creating your own microsimulations, it's really as simple as just creating an account. There's absolutely no developmental fees whatsoever to create on this platform. In fact, we wanted to make as little barriers as possible. That way you could immediately get in and start creating it. And honestly, there's kind of two ways that you can proceed with actually, publishing your simulation that you create this way. I mean, we have a kind of a private use model where if you want to use it at your institution, if you would like to actually monetize it, we can work with you that way. And if you'd like to take it even a step further to publishing, I mean, on a public scale, you could even work directly with us. We'll review your solution, and then Capsim will actively promote it and sell it around the globe. And in fact, that's something that we're going to do as a component of the grand prize. In addition to the cash prize, that top solution is going to be considered to go straight to market and analyzed by Capsim. But also for anybody participating, they'll have options to do that after the fact as well.
Thanks, Stephen, for that question, which was an important one. I guess on that note, and we had a lot of questions about this before we even launched, just in terms of, so Divya's question, forgive me, Esther's question, having written a case and submitted a case to the competition, can she still go ahead and publish that case? So I guess speaking to authorship rights, who owns the rights ultimately to the content? So if someone has an existing case, can they go and publish that separate to what they've used the case for in terms of this microsimulation?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. First off, absolutely. We see a lot of case study authors that have, jumped onto this platform and just want to simply make their case immersive. They can definitely do that. And you can do that as long as all of the content, of course, is yours. Now, in relation to putting it into a microsimulation, in regards to the intellectual property rights, that sort of thing, all of the rights stay with the author. Obviously the Capsim platform, it would be on Capsim's side, but anything you upload in the platform stays your intellectual property the entire time. And at any point you'd like to remove that, you can always remove it if you'd like to.
Great. Then there was a question about the 1 hour certification course. Would it be asynchronous?
Yes, it is asynchronous. And basically what we wanted to do with that was just have like a lightweight way of kind of teaching you some of the best practices of how to navigate the platform. Once you get access to the platform as well, we have a variety of help and support resources built in there. But the certification course is like an added bonus, if you will, to kind of learn some more of the best tips and tricks. But I think this is also a good point to describe as well, that at any point in your development process, at any point during this competition, we at Capsim, as well as me personally, would be more than happy to jump on the phone with you to not only help with, technical aspects like how do I do this in the platform, for instance, or how do I, make this feature work, but also even if you just had, choose one of our template concepts or one to create your own concept, I'd be more than happy to jump on the phone with you and kind of go through a concept check, if you will, where we kind of walk through your idea and I could tell you how this could fit in different parts of the simulation, everything like that. From start to finish, we're going to be here to help you out every step of the way.
Great. And then last question before we move on to the actual process. Takako, I think we've answered it, but just for the sake of clarity, certainly they'll have access to their simulations after the competition. It will live on the platform. Yeah.
100%, absolutely. And you can start using them in your instruction immediately after that. Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so just kind of take us through the development process. We have, important to point out, a fortnight, 2 weeks before certain things need to be handed in. September 30th, I believe, is the date. So this is important to kind of focus on and make sure that we know what we need, but also just the process of developing the microsimulation.
Sure, absolutely. So let's talk about like actually creating it first, and then I can walk you through our landing page where we actually provide all the information and some resources for you to kind of submit your concept and whatnot. As for the actual, key points in the development process, there's really only 2 or 3. Really, it starts off with picking out a scenario, of which on our landing page, some of you may have seen, we came up with 4 different templates that are very much in line with GBSN's mission, and we even provide sample participant roles, suggested subject areas, as well as skills that you can focus on. But if you want to create your own, that you've just got to kind of create that scenario and decide on what skills you'd like to create if you don't want to go with one of our predetermined templates. But after that, really only the main step is creating the content itself. Creating your fictional characters, creating the emails and instant messages, and assigning any type of scoring you'd like to analyze, how students respond to those. Those would really be the two main things. Outside of that, looking towards the bottom of this slide here, where we talk about developmental tactics and like a debrief guide, for this particular competition, we're really focused on the actual microsim experience. But after the fact, again, we're willing to work with you to help you with creating, these kind of, call them professor and student resources that kind of flesh out the experience. So that way, maybe a professor wants to use your solution and they want to have a post simulation discussion. Well, we simply create a debrief guide that gives them a kind of an idea of what the possible outcomes in your simulation are, discussion questions, for instance. All of that we can talk about after the competition, because really the main portion I'll be working on is the actual email content itself. But really, it's as simple as just submitting your team registration and concept form to us by the end of the month, and then creating and finalizing your simulation by November 2nd, because at that point, GBSN and Capsim will then begin analyzing them with some criteria we've selected, which you can find on our landing page, as well as letting anybody at the GBSN Beyond virtual conference experience them as well.
There was a question earlier regarding feedback provided to students or anyone who would go through the microsimulation process. Is that an automated kind of interface in terms of, you'd be able to print out or see this is what you're doing, how you're faring, or is it still very much reliant on the human feedback? Hopefully, I'd imagine it's still a bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it is a combination of both for sure. But what's great about the feedback is that, it's instantaneous and it's individualized. And I think one important thing of distinction here is that at no point are you having to create the feedback report or anything like that. You creating the emails and assigning point values, scoring to the different responses is all you need to do. And the outputs or the feedback report that you're seeing on the screen now is automatically generated. And just to kind of show you what exactly the student will be receiving, well, we give them kind of four pieces of feedback, four critical pieces of feedback. The first one is we're going to show them their overall performance in the simulation by percentile. So their score up against the general populace out there. The second thing we do is we give them a developmental index. So how proficient were you at responding to a given email, and how consistent was that proficiency through the experience? And then kind of alluding to what I was stating at the beginning of today's webinar is that the most important data here is actually visualizing the self-awareness levels and skill gaps. So we give them a gauge on a scale of 1 to 6 on where they rated themselves versus how they did in the simulation. And then below, again, we visualize those skill gaps. That way we can identify what skills or competencies are in most need for improvement. And as far as the individual component where you're actually providing feedback to them, verbally and kind of helping them with their next steps, we include an individual development plan builder that's optional, that they can actually take developmental tactics provided by the author of the simulation and create actionable goals. So they could say, I want to improve my communicating abilities by 10% by this date. Here's exactly what I'm going to do in order to achieve that goal. And then in terms of how I'm going to assess my performance at achieving that, I can simply go through the inbox again in that kind of pre and post test atmosphere. So there's a variety of different applications there, but going back to the key question, the feedback auto-generated, you do have the opportunity to add personalized feedback to it as well. But all of this is immediately available to the student right after they complete your microsimulation.
This is great, and leads me on to a question by Savannah, at one of our member schools. Wants to know if the simulation has ever been used to do prescription of courses. So as an example, at Porto Business School, they only offer executive education short courses, exec MBAs, exec masters and MBAs. They're commonly approached by middle managers who are not sure of which skills they need to develop for career growth. So could they develop a simulation that helps address prescription, just like, and to use Savannah's example, like Netflix suggests your next movie or series to watch?
Absolutely. Well, we haven't seen that particular concept implemented just yet. I think that it's something that's definitely relevant for this type of microsimulation application. And then kind of going back to like one of the corporate use cases, I can give you an idea. While this isn't necessarily prescriptive, it does kind of give some insight into the different managers at a company. We at Capsim created a general management and a people management version. And we have a couple corporations that use the general management version to kind of assess first level managers for career advancement. You know, who are the top performers? Again, going to that high potential identifier. But with the people management version, we see that used with mid to senior level managers. And really it's all about kind of understanding, you know, their managerial decision-making process, as well as, you know, their supervisory responsibilities as well. So I think that, you know, by extension, you could take that kind of use case and kind of lead it into kind of a more prescriptive model. Absolutely.
Great. And then just to address this question, which I'm pretty sure the answer is yes to, Ola says that, thanks for this. Would it be possible to take a group of faculty through this if our business school puts some people together in Lagos? Matt, you do this kind of Q&A session presumably all the time. So I assume that's a short yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Great, and we'll make sure that when we send out this particular recording in an email, as I said, hopefully within a few hours, we'll be sure to include Matt's contact details as well, so you can reach out that way. There were one or two more questions specifically, I guess, in terms of how the competition works. Maybe just for the sake of clarity again, the concept paper that we're requiring, what exactly is that? What is in there? What's required?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. I do apologize for jumping on and off it here, but let me go ahead and exit out of this PowerPoint and let me bring it up here. So what I would like to show you is that concept form is actually very straightforward. What we're doing here is you'll simply pick one of the templates as mentioned earlier, or create your own. And simply all you're doing is just providing some general info on the simulation as well as the scenario. So for instance, which of the 4 templates are you choosing? What would you like the name of your simulation to be? What primary course areas or applications do you see this being used for? What key subject areas and skills would you like to cover and measure respectively? And then pulling a little bit further down here in the scenario, you know, what exactly is the scenario that you're going to be going through in the simulation? What's the role of the participant? And again, if they choose a template, much of this is filled out for you. You just might expand upon it a little bit. But, you know, just kind of, and also what industry and what countries is the microsimulation taking place in? So very straightforward, only about 10 questions here for you to fill out. And it's kind of just a good check with CAPS and say, okay, you know, we've got an idea of how many people are going at a particular case. And if they have any questions for us, if they want to connect with us, do a concept check, for instance, we already have some insight into how we can prepare for that call and, you know, what specific use case examples we could provide to them in best practices.
Okay, fantastic. And just to reiterate those dates again, we need this completed, the concept form completed within a fortnight, so September 30th.
Exactly. And right here, I'm actually on the GBSN Beyond Faculty Simulation Lab page. I could walk through this very quickly as well, but right down here at the bottom, like Rob is referring to, we actually give you the important dates here. So registering your team by the end of the month, September 30th, yes, concept forms on the same date, and you can find those links all right below, and then the microsims being due November 2nd, basically. And then just to very quickly, in 15 seconds or so, walk through what this page entails. You have your registration button where you'll be able to submit your team. We detail the prizes as well as the participation prizes for this competition. We have some great information on what Capsim Inbox is, like we're covering right now. You can even try a 5-minute demo of our human resources version to give you some additional context. And then, of course, below that, you'll see the case templates we've been referring to, important dates, and then we've got some frequently asked questions down here at the bottom as well. So.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen for a second, just so that they're kind of up there again. So you have it. Team registration by Wednesday, September 30th. I'm pretty sure we'll be okay on the time. So don't worry about that. Just make sure it's in Wednesday, September 30th, and then have those forms completed essentially by the next day. And we've tried to make the registration process for Beyond and then the sign-up process for these various experiences as clear and as sleek as we could possibly do while trying to be as inclusive. But please just reach out to us. Any questions you may have, beyond@gbsn.org. Send an email if you want to type it in the chat right now. Any questions left hanging over, we're more than happy to address. I also understand that there may be people on this particular webinar who have already registered for GBSN Beyond and already signed up for the Faculty Simulation Lab. Then, of course, there may be people who have done neither, or there may be a third grouping of people who've registered for Beyond but haven't signed up for the Faculty Simulation Lab. The link to sign up to the Faculty Simulation Lab is provided to you along that registration step when you're registering for GBSN and Beyond. If you've already registered and you're looking for that link, it also does live on the Faculty Simulation Lab page on GBSN's website. So if you go to gbsn.org, you follow the links, gbsn.org/beyond, follow the links to the Faculty Simulation Lab, you'll find the link there. But again, there's a lot of links, there's a lot of navigating. Please, if you have any questions, just reach out to us and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. One of my favorite slides is this one, just to kind of give you a broader sense of what we're doing apart from the Faculty Simulation Lab. Of course, that's all wrapped up into this. We already have over 50 business schools and higher education institutions, organizations who've already registered for GBSN Beyond. This graphic only includes our GBSN member schools who have already signed up and are keen to engage in these various tracks that we have on offer. So we really encourage you, if you haven't yet, please do consider registering and then take it a step further and actually register for GBSN Beyond. It is one institutional fee. So that is to say, if you belong to GW Business, who's already registered, they've paid one institutional fee. And that means every single individual who is affiliated to that school, and even the broader George Washington University community outside of the school, they're able to then get a code from us, from their contact individual, and register themselves for free, and then sign up to any of the opportunities on offer. So it really is as inclusive as we could possibly make it be, and we'd love for you to join us. And then, of course, we already have over 30, but these are just 30 of the territories represented, and this is purely based on schools in these countries. We have far more nationalities of individuals who will be in attendance, but we have schools in 30 countries already who have signed up. So it is international, it's inclusive, and it really is going to be something that we're very excited about. We're hitting almost 400 participants already, with some weeks still to come. So I can keep going and give you multiple reasons why this is something that we should partake in. And of course, whilst we gather today to talk about the Faculty Simulation Lab, we also have our student competition, which is focused on humanitarian logistics with our member school and partners and sponsors at the Hanken School of Economics and their Human Logistics Institute. So that's one place where you want to direct your students. There's also a cash prize available. There's a lot going on, and I can keep going. Dan, I don't know whether there's anything in particular that you want to draw our attention to before we wrap things up.
Well, I appreciate especially you giving the context for within GBSN Beyond as a whole set of experiences for students, faculty, and leaders. Just maybe just 3 quick notes as my closing remarks, if that's okay. Number one, I do want to emphasize that as part of the faculty track, we are not only delivering this core experience for faculty members through this simulation lab, but there's a series of workshops and webinars designed to support your faculty, especially during this time where things are pretty difficult. For example, there's a great session on the agile professor. We know that all of our faculty need to be agile, and it's just an hour-long experience to help develop some skills and agility. And they're focused on teaching and research. The second thing I want to emphasize is that we've designed this to be easy. You don't need to form a team. You could do this as an individual. We like especially cross-functional teams always at GBSN, but the experience is designed to be really quick and easy. And we don't want this to be an obstacle to learning. We want this to be an opportunity for learning. And then finally, we do encourage an emphasis on these simulations on a few things in particular at GBSN. One is we really love the idea that some of these will be developing world centered. But number 2, this is a really good opportunity to do some things, introduce some challenges as part of this experience that are very important today. Challenges with respect to inclusion, sustainability, environment, those become part of this. So it's not just about how to operate a factory. In fact, you're not going to learn optimal inventory management in this 45-minute experience. But we can introduce issues related to sustainability, human rights, things like that as part of this context, and we encourage that. That's it. Those are my closing remarks. Hopefully they're motivating and we get many faculty engaged across the world.
Great. Matt, was there anything you wanted to wrap up with, anything we may have left out or you want to emphasize?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think Dan put it very eloquently in terms of the focus that we're looking for in these simulations. And if there's any closing aspect on my end, it's that I really appreciate all of your time. I hope that I see a couple of you take part in this competition, and I'm really excited to see what we have created for us and everything. And then, like I said, if you need any help at any point, we at Capsim, we're going to be there every step of the way.
Fantastic. So again, one last time to reiterate, you're going to get an email with this recording. You'll get an email with all kind of supplementary materials to please forward along to everyone else at your schools, at your institutions. Get everyone excited to sign up. It's there for you. The more, the better for everyone involved. The more teams, the better. So we look forward to having you engage. And again, if there are any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be more than happy to address them as quickly as we can. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you and your schools and your institutions involved with the Faculty Simulation Lab with Capsim and GBSN. And of course, we look forward to seeing everyone involved more broadly at GBSN Beyond. And that gets underway as of October. The main event, of course, November 9th through 13th. Everything is online at gbsn.org/beyond. So have yourself a good afternoon or a good evening or a good morning, wherever you find yourself in the world, and stay safe. We'll speak to you soon.